Hi everyone, my name is Anbu. You can just call me Anbu, my name will be quite long, mouthful. From ACRES, Singapore. So today I'm going to share a little bit, one story of that was a success story that helped live animals at the wet markets in Singapore, and how we strategized, and hopefully share some of the lessons that we learned as well. And just to give a very quick introduction, ACRES is an animal protection charity in Singapore. We were founded in 2001 and have been working very closely with the AfA members, learning a lot through plenty of conferences and interactions. So as an organization, we also focus on tackling the root cause of the issue, and how we do it is through the different focus areas that we have. The 6 focus areas. We do have a 24-hour wildlife rescue service, a hotline that people would call us to rescue either trafficked wild animals or native animals in Singapore. So if you're wondering whether Singapore has wildlife, we handle about 60 to 70 calls a day, and admit about 5 to 10 patients a day. So that is pretty high. And we also have a crime unit that investigates cases related to illegal wildlife trafficking or keeping or selling. So different scenarios where we work together with the local government agencies for enforcement work. And to tackle all these issues, the Humane Education Department forms a backbone of the organization to address the root cause. So we start very young and focus on the fact that animals are sentient beings. That forms a foundation of our education programs. And in addition, we engage a lot with volunteers, and we also promote cruelty-free lifestyle as an animal welfare group. And the new focus area that we have is promoting coexistence, because Singapore is developing as a city in nature, where nature is brought very close to people, people brought very close to nature. But people are not often ready with what to do when you come across wild animals. Like just yesterday, we were my colleagues who are also here, there are 6 colleagues from ACRES here, so they all share the workload. And we were just talking about how a crocodile was put down by the authorities because he was just found on a beach due to public safety concerns. So going on to the actual story that I wanted to share was, this was one of the popular blog write-ups for travel, people who travel to Singapore, about exotic meat that is sold and live animals that are displayed, at our wet markets in Singapore. And it's a very popular part of the tourist scene. So there are tours for people who come into Singapore to go and visit these wet markets. And you will see that live turtles, frogs, and eels, and fish as well, they are one of the most commonly displayed animals in these wet markets. And you can choose which animal people want to consume, and they would be slaughtered at the wet market and given to them. So this is an issue that we have been raising for many years, about a decade, about the issue with display of live animals. So what you see, sorry about images, but there's no slaughter images. So these are turtles who are wild caught from Indonesia, and also some are captive bred coming in from China, and frogs who are also bred in Singapore. We have a frog farm in Singapore, the American bullfrogs, and they're also imported from other countries for consumption. So this is how they are displayed, and this is legal. And we also have people buying these animals and releasing them for mercy release, for good karma, which where they release freshwater turtles in the sea, and we end up rescuing them and they don't make it. So when COVID happened, we saw a silver lining because we've been campaigning for appealing for a long time. It did not work. I know COVID was shaking the whole world, but there was a lot of spotlight on the wet markets, and we were like, okay, this is when we need to strike, when it's hot. So what we did was we collated a lot of footage into what happens at the wet markets. So I'm just going to play a video very quickly. If I could get your help to reduce the volume a little bit, so I can continue speaking to keep it to the time. What we did was we collected footage of what was happening at the wet markets. And, you can play, yeah. And we were looking at a few aspects of what's happening at the wet markets. For example, here you will see turtles and frogs and fish who are being sold live. and the health conditions they were displayed at some of the pain points that we could identify from the footage. So we collected all the visual evidence and we did not release it to public because we want to respect and work together with the government agencies. So we showed this video to them. We interviewed stall holders who shared with us that where are they from. The stall holder is talking about the turtle. So our investigator is asking where is the turtle from, and he shares that it's from Indonesia. They are flown over and they're also from the wild. So when they are from the wild, people do prefer them to consume. And what we did is also to look at the records of what's the quota for Indonesia and how much is Singapore consuming. And we identified that 70% of the country's quota was imported by Singapore. And this is also for public awareness to show what our demand for consumption causes to the, creates to the wild populations. And we also noticed some animals with shell abrasions. And this was a point of discussion during COVID, how when you put animals together too close, pack them together too close, and they have other health issues, welfare issues, it can be, where the pandemic can start, right? So we wanted to also cover those touch points. And we also documented that the live animals were kept close to where the raw meat was handled. And the footage also covered that the same gloves were used for slaughter and for handling money, which means I can go to, our point was that if I don't have to buy meat to get in contact with the blood of an animal who was slaughtered there. So all you needed to transact money and you will be able to actually have a contact point with the animal body parts as well. So, and another important point that was also shared was that the animals were never fed from the time they arrived at the market. So the vendor actually shared that there's no diet. That means they are on no diet, because if they are slaughtered when they are full, then the carcass is very smelly. So he was openly sharing with us that this is why they do not feed the animals. And he actually said they're hungry. So he even used the word corpse, and to say that full stomach corpse very smelly and hungry corpse no smell. So this is a transcript, so if we increase the volume we could hear, but we're just going to keep it low. And we documented this as well. So we showed this video to the government agency during closed door dialogue, and I'm going to skip this part to save time. So we closed, during a closed door dialogue, we actually shared this with the government agency, and they shared that it is not a problem. But if you notice, there are different government agencies who are involved in this. So what we did was not to do this alone. We worked together with SPCA Singapore as well. Some of them are here. There are 3 staff from SPCA Singapore. As welfare group counterparts, we wrote a joint letter to pass it to the government agencies. And the challenge with Singapore is that we have multiple agencies governing this situation. So what we did was to identify and speak their language, because it is a difficult time for all of us. The COVID, the lockdown was a difficult time for everyone. They are trying to scramble on what to do to keep the public safe. So it was also a challenging time for the government agencies. So we also had to be careful on what we are asking for. So what we did was we try to speak their language. One is Singapore Food Agency, and their vision is to save food for all. So we covered about use of same gloves and display of injured animals and possibly lesions, which could be diseases, and scientific evidence on zoonosis. These are again turtles from Indonesia, and they were kept in netting, which means their extremities get abrasions, and they were exposed to possibly systemic infections from being kept in very bad water, dirty water. And the other agency who was involved was Animal and Veterinary Service, whose vision is to safeguard the health and welfare of animals in Singapore. So we spoke about intentional prolonged starvation of live animals and complete absence of any regulations related to holding live animals for food purposes. We have regulations on holding live animals for other purposes, but not for food. And the other 2 agencies was National Environment Agency, which is on the hygiene, and National Parks Board, which is to look at conservation angle, which means sustainable use of wildlife and resources. So we spoke about precautionary principle and how Singapore is consuming 70% of one country's quota for wild-caught turtles. And this is a vulnerable species, and also CITES Appendix 2 listed, but again, the data is so incomplete. So the people that we work with, we speak to in Indonesia, they shared that there's not enough evidence, so we have to exercise precautionary principle when we do not have enough information. And we also collected a lot of science-based arguments to back up our position to submit this paper to them. And we wanted also quick results because that's the only time we can do this. COVID was the only time we could do this. And in response, we got a response from the agency that there's no breach in what's happening. Everything is okay, we don't have to worry. There's no violations, no infringements, and there's always regular surprise inspection. So we note your concerns, but everything is okay. So that is when it was within a month, and we decided to release the video to the public. So the media watched the video, they picked it up, they picked up the story, and the response was no violations in Singapore. We did get some feedback from some public saying, why are you doing fear-mongering? We had to be also mindful about talking about something that can be scary to people during a pandemic. But unfortunately, we didn't have a choice. This is our only time to do something for live animals in wet markets in Singapore. So we got selfish there and decided to go ahead with the campaign. So they said stalls can sell live animals for meat. Again, we learned another lesson. We decided, can we make our ask easy for them to say yes to? So we quoted other things, which is for poultry, Singapore did amazing. What they did was, in early years, a few decades ago, they already banned display and slaughter of live chickens at the wet markets, again for hygiene reasons. But we used it to say, it's nothing new for Singapore. Let's do it for other live animals as well, even for the same reasons. So that didn't work. So ACRES' founder, Louis Ng, is attending the conference, but he's not here today. He said, I will attend your session if you put a photo of me. So I did put a photo of Louis, but he's not here. So, yeah. So don't look at the photo. But what we did was, he is our founder, one of our founders of the organization, but when he stepped down from the organization in 2015, 2016, he became a member of parliament. So we had an amazing voice in the parliament for the animals. So we requested him to help with asking a parliamentary question. So Louis filed a parliamentary question about this. We gave him all the background information, and the response was that there are transmission risks, but they are low. But there has been no cases of disease transmission in Singapore, which is true. But they were willing to review, and that was a big win already, that at least they were not saying everything is okay. So that was great, and the next step was, there's something missing here. Okay, so something happened between May 2020 to August 2020, and that was a lot of emails, nagging continuously. Every week we would nag, even though we were completely aware that the agencies were also facing challenges with whatever was happening with COVID in our communities. So they told us in August 2020 that the sale will be disallowed from December 2020 onwards, which was fantastic. But what we did was, we thanked ACRES and SPCA, we thanked the agencies, but we did not release this to the public. We thought, okay, we have gotten the win for the animals, but let's not blow this up again, because the lockdown is not about this. Already people are worried about other things. So what we did was, we waited, and in March 2021, there was this publicity stunt by a seafood restaurant who decided to walk crabs in order to prevent mussel wastage. So they would leash them and walk, and public were outraged by it, which was fantastic. That means it shows that they care. People in Singapore care about how these animals in the food industry are treated. So we used that that we issued a statement where SPCA and ACRES spoke to the seafood restaurant, asked them to stop this nonsense. So, and then we used that time to say that we are also, by the way, happy to share that the agencies have agreed to disallow sale and display of live animals in our wet market. So we didn't want to corner the government agencies, which is very important if we want to work together with them. I will tell you why it's important, because in the last slide, and after we posted this on ACRES' social media, the media picked it up, and they asked for a quote from the Singapore Food Agency, and they gave this quote. Some of you might wonder, there's no mention of welfare, but sadly, we will accept this. It's a first step. It's a first step. So, so it's good that they said it's to further reduce. Low risk doesn't mean no risk. We have this campaign in Singapore which says low crime doesn't mean no crime. So you have to still be alert. So we used the same principle, and we were happy that they were able to give a public statement on this. And some of the lessons is to nag, persevere, so don't give up. There's one email chain that me and my colleagues sent 2 years ago, and some of the members of the parliament did not reply. Until today, every 2-3 weeks once, we send a reminder. And when we meet them at public meetings, I'm like, sorry, Anbu, I remember, I haven't replied to your email, I'll get to you soon. So we are constantly in their vision. So, and strategize and use the timing. Unfortunately, pandemic was one way for us to help the animals in the wet markets, and engaging voices in the parliament, media, and give credit to the agencies, because we need to work with them. There's no way we can do this on our own. Why? Is because this. So we are looking into starting a working group on farm animal welfare, but in Singapore we call it food animals welfare, because not all animals are farmed who are consumed. So we still have quite a few issues where live pigs are imported into Singapore. This is an accident where live chickens were transported, and they were in very bad situation, and chickens died because of the heat. So you can already see many gaps in the way that we actually do not have regulations. There's plenty of work to do, which means we need to work together with the farms, the traders, the slaughterhouses, stall holders, live seafood still being displayed in some restaurants. All this needs to be addressed. So this is the future of whatever that has happened during COVID. It took us more than 2 years, but Aarti from Singapore SPCA here and myself, we just had a recent meeting a week ago with SFA, Singapore Food Agency. So there's some starting points, and we are looking forward to continuing the perseverance, the pestering, the nagging, and driving the change for the animals. So thank you very much. Two minutes. If not, there are 6 of us, and also Singapore SPCA is also there, so we can meet and chat during coffee breaks as well. Thank you so much.